paper I saw, which was done by Wahbie Long. And it took me back to thinking about the importance of culture when we work with people. I visited the Red Cross Hospital, and there I saw a child that had been raped, and she was in the ward there with her mom, and there was a disconnect between the child and the mom. And I began to think about what could be the surrounding issues that could create such an environment for the child and that mom. So it is a problematic for some psychologists in African contexts to dismiss African culture, as has been done by scholars such as Wahbie Long and Malose Matebula, who in their writings undermine the role of culture in thinking on psychotherapy, teaching, and research. Long argued that an authentic African psychology must address inequality and violence, and a cultural undertaking in this regard is an unworkable project. Today, I want us to talk. My piece is that I focus on how children make sense of sexual trauma. However, I contend that culture emerges out of socio-economic considerations, including inequality. People, children, in my work, make sense of experiences such as child sexual trauma using cultural explanations. And these explanations are rooted in socio-economic considerations. Therefore, in relation to understanding topics such as child sexual trauma, African psychology needs to address the culture as enrooted in socio-economic considerations and give meaning to children's existence. Culture is a system of socially transmitted behavior patterns that relate people in shared societies to their ecological settings. These are ways of life in the communities, including technologies and modes of economic organization, settlement patterns, modes of social groupings, and political organizations, religious beliefs, and so on. So culture then can be viewed as behavior patterns characteristic of a certain community, a population group, or society. It can be seen as a pattern for behavior or a pattern of behavior. In other words, culture can be a product of behavior, or behavior can be a product of the culture. But that is a secondary issue, as states. So, culture, as you will see, is not based on genes, and neither is it a race issue. Culture is a person in an environment, the contextual issue. Culture is not static. It is a person in environment interaction. It is about behavior patterns associated with a particular group of people that is said to be customs or people's way of life. So cultural African psychologies or psychology that seeks to understand the culture does not seek to homogenize African people. as some like may have implied. Culture, as explained by Asante, is about space and time. So culture is influenced by economy. It is influenced by inequality. Inequality is a function of economic conditions. Example, these are the closer people in the rural Eastern Cape. And this is how they do life. They do life like this based on the technologies they have. So with what they have, they make a living, and that living becomes a lifestyle. And to us, it's their culture. It may be true, it may be not. I am closer to. I don't do this. You will never find me. But when there are imicimbi at home, you find us in a suburban area, putting pots outside, buying wood, and doing exactly this. So what is culture? Culture is how people live. It is how people make sense of their lives. And yes, it is carried over, and yes, it is learned, but it is defined by space and time. It is not static, so it can't be generalized to a common people, but it belongs to a shared people in a shared space. So, if we look at our children and we try to understand how they make sense of sexual violence related to Roma, we need to look at what is going on around them. What are the cultures that are shaping their lives, and how that has then interacted within their lives and in their minds? That has become their culture and is a point of departure in understanding how children would then make sense of trauma. A society's culture is based on and consists of whatever its people have come to know, to believe in order to operate in a manner acceptable to people of that shared space. For example, in some cultures, when a child is raped by an uncle and the child reports that, the mother of the child herself will say, "Thula mntana, my child, be quiet. Stay in the family. Akwenziwa njalo. We don't do things like that. So contain it." In others, a child may have been exposed to fondling by an adult. Boy or girl, it's still a child. Whether a man will fondle a boy child, wherever it may be, the child might be told, "Go and pray about it." In some instances, wherever it may be, remember, culture is not a racial issue. Culture is a lifestyle issue, a common experience issue. In some cultures, a child may believe, based on what they have seen happening, and say, "Well, this is happening to me because of ill luck," or "this is happening to me because of ancestral powers, spiritual factors," whatever it is. But there is a way that that child has been raised, the values that have been transferred to that child that is shaping how they make sense of their world and make sense of their experiences. It would then influence how that child would make sense of trauma. So, culture is not a material phenomenon. It does not consist of people, things, behavior, or emotions. It is rather an organization of these things, how they interact with one another, and how the child interacts with that. It is an ecological issue. It must be looked at in context. It is what people form out of these issues, or circumstances rather, what they have in mind about them. They are models of perceiving, relating, and how they interpret them, and how they and what they will then do next about them. So, how a child views sexual violence, how they make sense of the experience and interpret the trauma is not informed by inequality alone. And it is also not only informed by the violence, structural or physical or emotional. It is about the culture. The child's culture will help them make sense of it. Culture consists of standards for deciding what is, for deciding what can be, for deciding what one feels about it, for deciding what to do about it, and for deciding how to go about doing something about the experience. Culture will then determine a child's receptivity to a psychological intervention, as well as psychosocial education. How the culture of that child will influence how they receive what you say, how they will internalize it and interpret it. It is a child's worldview that will determine how they view, think, feel, and experience the sexual violence trauma. And this vary across cultural groups. And this is a point that Black makes. To understand child sexual violence, we need to look closely at the culture from which the affected child comes from, because it changes over space and time. To understand change and the diverse society is important. We must see cultures as elements in complex, cybernative systems of people, of human beings in their environments. So yes, in agreement with Long and others, an authentic African psychology must address inequality and violence. But we cannot dismiss, we can never ever dismiss a cultural understanding of children in the case of trauma and other social problems, because culture emerges out of socio-economic conditions. What they have, the socio-economic situation they are in, will determine how they live, and that we will then say is their culture. I'm almost done. People make sense of experiences such as child sexual trauma using cultural explanations, and these explanations are rooted in socio-economic considerations. Therefore, in relation to understanding topics such as child sexual trauma, African psychology needs to address culture as enrooted in socio-economic conditions. Thank you.